Hello, this is part one of the ancient legend of Bingle Boo, as written by that famous Scottish person, Richard Townes. Hope you enjoy it. With purple eyes and speckled nose, a wart and pimples too, a septic wound with oozing pus, his name was Bingle Boo. At 8 feet tall with a leather skin, a sword in either hand, our Bingle roamed the streets at night and terrorised the land. He lived outside a little town, its name was Broken Steeple. He'd steal their goats and sheep and pigs, and sometimes ate the people. A fire burned in Bingle's cave, the dancing shadows darted. His dinner cooked among the flames, it smelled like someone farted. Tonight, he thought, tonight's the night, my very favourite meal. It's cooked in garlic onion sauce, a princess served with veal. The princess didn't want to die, especially on that fire. I want to die aged 99 before my funeral pyre. So Bingle granted half her wish with a sympathetic sigh. He didn't push her in the flames, he stabbed her in the eye. He stabbed her in the abdomen, he stabbed her in the brain. He stabbed her in her inner ear and stabbed her eye again. He cooked her spleen in bile sauce, he boiled her lungs in brine. He ate the inside of her chin and nibbled on her spine. Now Bingle had a pointed chin. His nose was long and thick, the handsomest of all the Groms apart from Bingle Blick. And Bingle Blick was very big and very, very bad. And Bingle Boo had hated him because he ate his dad. They met one day upon a bridge, a narrow little track, and neither Grom would step aside and neither Grom went back. They stared each other in the eye and neither flinched a bit. Said Bingle Boo to Bingle Blick, "You move, you piece of shit." But Bingle Blick stood still and proud, he drew his sword and knife. Said Bingle Blick to Bingle Boo, "You move or lose your life." But Bingle Boo was very big and very, very fleet. He held his sword above his head and stabbed the bastard's feet. He kicked him right between the legs, he gave himself a grin. He saw his victim doubled up and kneed him on the chin. And Bingle Blick could only groan. He tried to call his mum, but when the knee had hit his chin, he'd bitten off his tongue. Without his mother's magic spell, he knew he'd lost the fight. But Bingle Blick was quite a Grom and laughed with all his might. But laughing wasn't good enough, he knew he'd soon be dead, and Bingle Boo held up his sword and roared at him instead. "You're finished now, you've got no tongue, and death's too good for you, and every time you try to speak, remember Bingle Boo." Now every town in this fair land was haunted by a beast, and Bingle's town was going to have a broken steeple feast. A feast to honour Bingle Boo, at least that's what they said. But Bingle knew they had a plan to capture him instead. He sent a message to the king. "Of course I'll be your guest. I'll bring some homemade Grom cake wine, and you provide the rest." So Bingle made his little plan. "It's time to have some fun. I'll kill the king, I'll kill the queen, I'll even kill his mum. And then the castle will be mine, and then I'll be the king, and then I'll be a happy Grom, and then I'll do my thing." So Bingle Boo prepared himself with sword, with axe and knife, and with the great strength of 10 fine men, he knew he'd keep his life. He wandered down the castle road, he sat inside the hall. He looked around and saw the folk and thought, "I'll have a ball." He sat between the king and queen, he ordered squalling cat. He bit its leg off while it screamed and washed it down with rat. He drank his share of Grom cake wine, and then he drank some more. He drank so much he could not stand and threw up on the floor. He threw up on the king and queen, it dribbled down his chin. He stood behind a handsome knight and puked all over him. And when he'd finished all his food, the king got up to speak. "We've got you now, you Bingle Boo. Tonight we're not so weak." Then one by one some 20 knights came running through the door. The one in charge, called Tinsel Ted, gave out the battle roar. "We're for the king and for the town," cried noble Tinsel Ted. So Bingle Boo pulled out his knife and threw it at his head. But Bingle Boo was much too drunk. He missed it by a bit. The knife went flying through the air and stuck in Tinsel's tit. Then Bingle drew his battle axe. He gave a mighty swing. He ran towards his royal host and stuck it in the king. He raised his axe and drew his sword. The king began to beg. Another swing from Bingle's axe. The monarch lost his leg. The knights advanced on Bingle Boo. The battle had begun. There were no match for this great Grom, and Bingle had some fun. They thrust and parried, stabbed and swung, but Bingle only smiled. He was quite casual in his fight, He wasn't even riled. And then a sword found Bingle's head, a cut that was really bad. The blood was running down his face, and Bingle Boo was mad. He saw the man who cut his head. His name was Robbie Rote. So Bingle reached out with his claw and ripped out Robbie's throat. He bit a knight upon the arm, another on the chin. Then someone stabbed him in the brain, so Bingle gutted him. But Bingle's brain was oozing out. His skull began to crack. Then Tinsel Ted crept up behind and stabbed him in the back. Now that's enough for any grom. His head began to swoon, and just before he went to sleep, he howled up at the moon. Now on the moon, or so they say, and very, very odd, there lived a very mighty grom. His name was Bingle Bob. And Bingle Bob could help a grom just once in every life. And Bingle Boo had hoped to use his help to find a wife. But as he lay in pain and chains for months and weeks and days, he thought he saw great Bingle Bob amidst his fevered haze. He heard him talking in his dreams. Said Bob to Bingle Boo, "I heard you howl, I'm here to help. It's time to rescue you." He woke next day, his fever gone, the pain had left his head. The wound had vanished from his back. He thought he must be dead, but when he looked around he saw his slimy rat-filled jail, and then he thought of Bingle Bob and knew he could not fail. He felt a surge of power come from deep inside his mind. He closed his eyes and summoned all the strength that he could find. He pulled his chains, they snapped like string, a rather easy job. He knew his strength was not his own. It came from Bingle Bob. So Bingle wondered what to do. He didn't really know. He couldn't stay inside the jail. He knew he had to go. And just before he smashed the door, the room filled up with smoke, and Bingle Bob was standing there, dressed in his Bingle cloak. Said Bingle Bob to Bingle Boo, "I've helped you all I can. You're on your own, but take advice. Beware of Filthy Fran."